Hi there, it's Wednesday, the 17th of June 2020. We're continuing to ask the question this week, what makes you cry? What makes you cry? So far we've learned that crying is a response to the emotions of happiness or sadness or anger. And yesterday we were looking at the fact that crying shows that you care. Crying is not actually weakness but strength and is the most appropriate thing for us to do in many situations. And today we're looking at the fact that crying arises out of suffering. Crying arises out of suffering. Some years ago in our family, we suffered terribly when my mother-in-law's dog, Kerry, unfortunately got lost and we never found her again. And the crying and the suffering that there was in our family was very deep, as you could imagine. We live in a world of suffering, actually, when you think about it. There's many great things and many good things in our world, yes, but there's also much suffering in our world today. Why? Well, if you asked Yoda from Star Wars, he would have said that fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, and hate leads to suffering. But if you look in the Bible would say that the wages or the result of sin is what leads to death and suffering. It's the result of sin in our world. God did not make this world with sin in it. It was something that came into the world through the wrong choices that men and women have made. And that sin is what actually leads to the suffering that we experience in our world. One thing is for certain, that suffering leads to crying and leads to tears. And Jeremiah knew tears in his life because of the suffering that he faced. He was mistreated by his family. He was plotted against by the community members. He was hated by the religious world. He faced verbal abuse. He faced physical abuse. He was actually thrown down a well at one point and left to die. He was rejected. And why? Because he was simply obeying God and delivering the message that God had given to the people, that they were to turn from their sin and turn back to him again, turn back to God again. And Jeremiah faced suffering and abuse because of delivering that message, which led him to cry and to be known as the weeping prophet. And it also seemed to lead him into depression as well at some times. In fact, he says in chapter 20, verse 14 of Jeremiah, he says, "Cursed be the day I was born. May the day my mother bore me not be blessed. Cursed be the man who brought my father the news." He actually was so sad because of the suffering that he was experiencing that he actually wished he had never been born. And sometimes our suffering can lead us perhaps to feeling like that. You know, it's true as well that Jesus faced suffering too. In fact, he faced much of the same suffering that Jeremiah faced. Jesus was misunderstood by his family. He was plotted against by the citizens of his community. He was hated by the religious leaders. He was verbally and physically abused. He was rejected because of the message that he preached from God, his Father. And he wasn't thrown down a well, but he was hung up on a cross and left to die. Now, Jesus did not succumb to depression, but he did face mental anguish and torment because of the suffering he faced. In the Garden of Gethsemane, he sweat great drops of blood, such was the mental anguish that he went through, and he cried. In fact, in Hebrews chapter 5, verse 7, it talks about Jesus' life, and it says, during the days of Jesus' life on earth, he offered up prayers and petitions with loud cries and tears to the one who could save him from death. Jesus knows what it is to suffer, and because he knows our suffering, he is able to comfort us in our suffering. Jesus cried because of his suffering. But comfort is available. Thank God, comfort is available. 2 Corinthians chapter 1 says, "Praise be to the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of compassion and the God of all comfort, who comforts us in all our troubles, so that we can comfort those in any trouble with the comfort we ourselves have received from God." God is present in all of our troubles, in all of our suffering, through all of our tears. And he promises to comfort us in all our troubles if we will reach out to him, if we will pray and ask him, if we will connect with him and receive that comfort from him. Just take some time in your troubles, in your suffering, to look to God, to receive the comfort that you need from God. And you know, even through our sufferings, as we receive that comfort, we can perhaps even say, as Paul said in Romans chapter 8, verse 18, that I consider that our present sufferings are not worth comparing with the glory that will be revealed in us. Even through the troubles, even through the sufferings, even through the tears that we are experiencing and will experience in our lives, we have this future hope as Christians that is going to be so wonderful, to be with God forever. And so those sufferings that we go through just now are nothing actually in comparison with the glory that is to come. May God comfort you in all your suffering. May God comfort you through all your tears. May God bless you. Speak to you again tomorrow.